Hello YouTube, and welcome back to another video. This time I'm doing a games I've been playing video. Just have 4 games here for the PS3 that I've been playing recently. Just wanted to give my thoughts and opinions on each game. Yes, I think I'll just get started right away. First game. Well, this is not so much the game itself. This is actually the expanded DLC. I picked up the Game of the Year edition of this game. I don't want to talk about the main game itself, as I really wanted to speak about the added on extra mission DLC pack. And the game in question is Batman Arkham City. This is the Game of the Year edition, and what I wanted to talk about was the Harley Quinn Revenge extra mission. Now, I already owned a copy of Batman Arkham City. I completed it, enjoyed the game. Brilliant game, really had a lot of fun with it. But when the Game of the Year edition came out, I opted to get it. So I could play the extra missions. It just sort of worked out cheaper to buy a separate physical copy of the special edition. I did wait for the price to go down, so I picked it up very cheap, and just so I could go straight into the DLC. But because I'd sort of left it for a while, for a long time since I played the Arkham City, when I got it home, I just ended up playing through Arkham City again, and then once I finished that, then I went on to Harley Quinn's Revenge. Now, Harley Quinn's Revenge was a side mission that I was really eager to play, simply because it enabled you to play as Batman's sidekick, Robin, and I wanted to see what he was like. And in that respect, playing as Robin was not disappointing at all. He had enough different moves to make him distinct from Batman. So he wasn't just a reskinned Batman. He was definitely worth playing as. The mission as a whole was quite short. And I have to admit, it was actually relatively pointless. Unfortunately, you don't get to play as Robin throughout the entire expanded mission. You only get to play as Robin for like the first quarter of it, and then you're Batman once again. And I found that very disappointing. I actually wanted to play as Batman primarily, as Robin primarily, as I got tired of playing as Batman. Personally, I don't really think it's worth shelling out for. If you have already a copy of Arkham City, I don't really think it's worth it. If you don't have a copy of Arkham City, then by all means definitely get the Game of the Year edition. But the expanded mission, I feel, was not really up to what I was expecting. I mean, I would have to say so far the sort of best. Sorry about that. I got this. Anyway, I've got the best expanded mission that I've played so far was Undead Nightmare for Red Dead Redemption. The Undead Nightmare expansion was what I would consider proper DLC. It was a separate game unto itself, decent length of time. It offered enough variety. It was definitely worth it, and that is a very high recommendation. But unfortunately, I can't really recommend Harley Quinn's Revenge. I was very disappointed by it. There wasn't really much to do in the actual mission itself. It's just a couple of more rooms in which you take out more bad guys, and then you eventually take out Harley Quinn, where you also get to defuse a couple of bombs as well. You're not really missing much if you don't get to play it. Moving on, the next game that I wanted to talk about, and this is actually a game that I've completed a very long time ago, but I feel my memory of it was bit hazy, but I will just sort of talk about my feelings of the game and how I felt once I completed it. This was a game that I was very curious to play, as the series itself has sort of gone into a bit of a slump. It's certainly not a patch on the games the games were back in the earlier days. So I was very curious to play this game, because I've heard a lot of good things about this game. But I was still very sort of cautiously optimistic. And the game I'm talking about is Resident Evil Revelations. This game was originally a 3DS game that was eventually ported over to the PlayStation 3, and I do believe the 360 as well. And I have to say, honestly, I was left very pleasantly surprised. It was definitely more of what I wanted from a modern Resident Evil game. And it definitely brought back the survival horror elements. Most of the setting takes place on a cruise liner. And you get to play as Jill Valentine, one of the original characters from the first game. And it does have a very interesting premise. The majority of the game does take place on the cruise liner, but there are missions that do take place off the cruise liner, and you do get to play as different characters. If there are a couple of things I didn't quite like about the game, the first thing being the very sort of episodic nature of it. Being as the game was originally a 3DS game, it's sort of broken down into chapters. So it kind of plays out like a TV series. As one chapter finishes and you're about to begin the next chapter, it will sort of replay the events of the previous chapter like a TV show, where it will show you what happened the episode before. And while I understand why they did it like that, because again, it was made with the 3DS in mind, I don't know, it just sort of kind of took me out of it a little bit. I mean, I know it's a game, but I don't want it to feel like it's a TV show. I want to be immersed in the world, so I don't want to be taken out of it like you know, like there's a like ad break or something like that. So yeah, I didn't really like that aspect of it. The characters that you do get to play as for the most part are fine, although there was one section in the game where you get to play as these two very distinct characters, and I felt, while I do appreciate, you know, the extra bit of game, it felt more like padding. I didn't think that their storyline was really necessary, that I needed to play the whole thing. It felt like they were just trying to pad the game out. You do get to play as Chris Redfield as well, and his sections are great. But the main meat and potatoes of the game itself is on the cruise liner, and that section is really good. And it really does harken back to the sort of tight spaces, the sort of mansion, the small streets of Resident Evil 2, and it very sort of harkens back to that. It's very much survival horror. Ammo is very limited, so you do have to sort of save your ammo. And in that respect, it is all very much what I would expect from a modern day Resident Evil. It is over the shoulder like Resident Evil 4, which I personally believe is how Resident Evil should be played. I know some people might disagree with that, but I don't really think the old school tank controls versions would work in today's modern games. I think that the change in camera works, but it doesn't work in a sort of fast action setting. It only really works in a slower, more survival pace setting, which is what I feel this game definitely delivers on. The other bad thing I wanted to bring up was the monsters that you fight. Now, there are no zombies in this game, which is a bit of a shame. I would have definitely have prepared, I would definitely have wanted zombies. Instead, you get these sort of liquid-based monsters, and while the game is certainly creepy, it does have a good atmosphere. I didn't really find the monsters that scary. Yeah, that was probably one of the more significant things that I was quite disappointed with. The monsters as a whole were good. I mean, they all served their role, and the water-based monsters do move slow, very much like a zombie. But I don't know. Personally, I would have preferred zombies. I just don't think these water creatures really sort of scared me at all. I don't think I even flinched when one showed up. But there are some good scares in the game, but the sort of main enemy that you sort of come across while you're on the ship aren't really that scary, and I think that's another negative. But as a whole, it's definitely a game that I recommend to people if you like the older Resident Evil games. It's not quite sort of up there with the best Resident Evil games, but in terms of these more modern ones, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I mean, I've yet to fully play Resident Evil 5, and I've only played the demo of Resident Evil 6. But from what I've played of Resident Evil 6, I did not like. I quite like the Leon's missions, but I did not like Chris Redfield's missions. This plays more like Resident Evil Revelations plays a lot more like the sort of Leon missions from Resident Evil 6, but better. So so I definitely recommend it. If you like survival horror games, it's definitely one I recommend. It's definitely a step in the right direction for Capcom and for the Resident Evil franchise. So hopefully, you know, when the next Resident Evil game shows up, it'll be more like Resident Evil Revelations and less like Resident Evil 6. And the next game I want to talk about, and this is in relation to the first game, Arkham City, and that is Batman Arkham Origins. Now, there's been a lot of controversy towards this game. Essentially, it's been a game that's had a lot of technical issues. It's very, very buggy, and it seems to be across quite a few systems as well as the PC, I believe. But I did find this game to be quite buggy in the beginning, like to the point where it was completely broken. Once the patch took effect, the game played fine, but I still encountered, you know, screen tearing and certain glitches here and there, and I do believe at one point I did have to reset the game. But the game, as a game in itself, there were sort of a lot of good aspects to the game. I thought the voice acting was great. The storyline in the beginning kept me quite intrigued. And I did like the extra element of detective work that they implied. They sort of added to make sort of Batman more of the detective, which I thought was great. All that really worked for me. But as a whole, I did think that the game was sort of generic. It didn't really add anything significant from Arkham City. It pretty much is very much. It reminds me a lot of God of War Ascension, where it's you know, just another game in the series. There's nothing that is really moving it onto another level. I know that the game was not developed by Rocksteady. I know it was made by Warner Brothers Montreal, which is the same developer that did the Wii U version of Arkham City. You know, I mean, it's a perfectly workable, it's a perfectly serviceable game. If you want just another game in the Arkham franchise, another romp through Gotham City, by all means, definitely pick it up if you really enjoyed it. I mean, for myself, I enjoyed Arkham Asylum. I loved Arkham City, so there was no doubt in my mind I was going to pick this up. And it is a lot of fun for what it is, but I just felt that it felt more of the same. Didn't add anything really. The only thing they really did add, which I did enjoy, was the detective crime scenes. That was a lot of fun. But I felt that the boss battles were very predictable. I didn't enjoy them at all. You get to fight Bane twice in the game, and I found him very frustrating because it's not always clear when you're given the go-ahead to attack him. So I found a lot of times I kept dying, and it took a lot of trial and error to beat him. It wasn't sort of made very clear when it was the right time to attack him. You know, and on the whole, it was just very disappointing. There was a section when you go up against the Mad Hatter, which I did enjoy. When you sort of have to go through his sort of fun house, it's all themed around Alice in Wonderland, and I thought that section visually was very cool. It reminded me a lot of the Scarecrow section from Arkham Asylum. So it was a really good bit. It's like the voice acting again was stellar. It did not have Mark Hamill as the Joker, nor Kevin Conroy as Batman. It was all voiced by new guys, and they did a superb job in my opinion. It is a prequel game, so it's like a younger Batman. He's only been out for a very short time, so he still makes mistakes. And in that respect, I did enjoy it a lot. But as a whole, it just really depends. It really depends on how you feel about the previous games. If you enjoy them, by all means pick up Arkham Origins, but I don't really recommend paying full price for it. Definitely wait, pick it up on the cheap, as it doesn't really sort of deliver any sort of next level gameplay elements. It's just basically just another game. Nothing really stood out for me. And finally, this is a very early game in the PlayStation 3's run. It's a game I've had in my collection for a little while. Decided to finally put it in, give it a go. And the game is Conan. Now, I'm a big fan of Conan. I love the original films with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Really big fan. I do like the character, and I even enjoyed the more recent film with Jason Momoa. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like it, but I thought he was a great Conan. The film did have its flaws, but overall I did enjoy it. So I was very much looking forward to this game, as I know that the character was voiced by Ron Perlman, and that's the actor that's in who plays Clay in Sons of Anarchy. He also plays Hellboy as well in the films. And well, I won't say that my expectations were necessarily very high for this game. I was aware that this was an early game, so I wasn't expecting the graphics to be that amazing. But I have to say, overall, the game was not good. I mean, I don't want to judge it based on more recent games, but I would have to say this game is not even as good as the PS2 games of God of War, which essentially this game rips off. I mean, this game is very much a God of War clone. It is a 3D hack and slash game, but it just doesn't work. I mean, you know, I could harp on about the graphics, but that would be unfair because it is an early game. So I won't really dwell on the graphics. I can excuse the graphics. It basically looks like a high-res PS2 game. You could clearly tell this was at a point where developers were still sort of struggling with the PS3 architecture. So in that respect, I'm not really going to criticise it too much. But the gameplay itself is where the game really falls down. I found going through the game to be a chore. Just fighting regular enemies was a pain, simply because Conan just moves too slowly. Once he sort of locks into an animation of a swing, while you're sort of in the middle of the swing, you find that your character is just too slow, can't quite match the speed of his enemies. And so I find that while I'm swinging to hit an enemy, the enemy's already hit me like 2 or 3 times. And I found that really, really frustrating. My initial thought was maybe I'm playing this game the wrong way. Maybe I'm thinking too much God of War, and this game was a little bit more tactical. And I did try to play a bit more tactical, but I still found the same problems. Blocking became a headache. The special moves that you are given aren't very clear. I mean, I went very far into the game before I even realised I'd gained like 3 or 4 special attacks, special magic attacks. They're not made very clear. They're not very user friendly. I found myself pressing them accidentally. Trying to pick between them on the fly was a chore. Just the action itself I found to be sort of very slow. You do get to buy moves. You sort of, as you defeat more and more enemies, you sort of gain these sort of red orbs that you can use as currency to sort of buy new moves. But I found I didn't use any of them. It was very difficult. They just the button presses were just too many, too varied. I ended up buying loads and loads and loads of special moves, but didn't really use half of them. It just didn't think it was the execution. There was definitely some degree of effort put. There was clearly a love of the character in this game. You know, but they really did try to replicate the God of War style. They went for the epic musical score, tried to do epic boss battles, but really it is such a pale comparison to the God of War series. I mean, what makes it very disappointing as well is that it's a PS3 game, and yet it couldn't even live up to the PS2 God of War games in terms of spectacle, in just the boss layouts. Nothing really worked in this game. I found myself dying so many times throughout this game, and the only thing that enabled me to work my way through to the end was the checkpoints. Constant checkpoints enabled me to get through this game, but it was a complete slog. Most of the boss battles are very boring. They just standard. You're in a pit and you fight this one enemy as you're running around him, and you have to hit, dodge, rinse and repeat. You do get the odd sort of really big monster battle, which was fun, but the storyline wasn't really anything special, and there wasn't even much voice acting. I mean, I did feel that the actor Ron Perlman was so underused. I mean, I kind of understand they were probably going for a strong silent type character, but there isn't really much storyline. I mean, they have like an old woman that narrates the story, which pretty much echoes to God of War, which is the same sort of format, but it doesn't quite work. Nothing in this game really works, and the final boss battle was a pain in the behind. Really frustrating, because most of the characters, pretty much all characters, are faster than you, and a lot of the fighting is based on reaction timing. But because your character moves so slow in terms of how he fights, the animation moves are just too slow. You just can't really react in time to what is going on, and that's what really sort of ruined this game for me. I know this game can be bought for pennies nowadays, but I don't really recommend it. Even if you're a fan of games like God of War, these 3D hack and slash games, there are so many better games out on the market than this. It's not really worth your time. But yeah, so can't really give it a high recommendation, I'm afraid. So that's it, guys. Those are the games I've been playing recently. Please let me know what you guys think of any of the games. If you've been playing any of them, let me know what you guys think. Of course, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And of course, let me know in the comments below what you think of the games. Were these games on your list to play? Let me know. So thanks again for watching, guys. Very much appreciated. I will be back very soon with new videos, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.